I'll just start off with some background to energy and the energy transition. So in 1776, there was an inventor from the University of Glasgow who invented the steam engine. James Watt invented the steam engine in 1776. And this allowed us to suddenly burn dead dinosaurs to create industrial output. It's basically the birth of the Industrial Revolution started with the invention by James Watt of the steam engine. Moving gradually forward from there, anyone else want to guess what happened in 1776? American Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution and the American Revolution are exactly the same age today. They're exactly the same age. So industrialization of the world economy, burning dead dinosaurs, and the emergence of the US as a world power have the same birth date. And so, moving forward from there, about 100 years later, in Baku, Azerbaijan, it became the birthplace of the modern petroleum industry. So there were more oil wells in Azerbaijan within 6 miles of Baku from 1899 to 1901 than the entire US oil production. So all of these corporations started flocking to Azerbaijan, which also happens this year to be the host city and nation for the COP29 summit. So there you go, right? So the birthplace of big oil is now hosting the COP29 summit. So why is all of this relevant? Because dispatchable energy in the form of coal and oil are the foundations of the wealth creation of the Industrial Revolution. We are also seeing the impact of all of that on our climate, on floods and fires and all of that, from 250-ish years of overburning for our industrial production and wealth generation to basically elevate the standard of living of people all around the world. And so now we talk about an energy transition. So the energy transition is like, how do we burn less fossil fuels and use more energy that is not carbon emitting, but how do we make it more like carbon emitting energy so we have it when we need it? So the ancient religions like the Greeks and the Hindus, they had random gods who were like wind gods and solar gods and all of that, because they actually didn't, they went and prayed to these gods because they didn't realize when is the wind blowing and the sun shining? Like, who controls this thing? Why is it blowing at the wrong time? Like my structure is blowing over because of the wind god, or the sun isn't there when I need it. And this is essentially the problem that our panelists are solving. How do we get the energy out of the wind and solar and be like the hand of God to the grid to move the energy to when the grid actually needs it? So fortunately, at this point in our industrial lives, we don't have to pray to random Greek or Hindu gods who, govern wind and solar. That humans have actually started figuring out how to do this. So building on that, I'd like to point to something in the stock market. So in the top 100 market cap companies, there's $4.1 trillion of market value concentrated in the market value of Saudi Aramco, Exxon, Chevron, Shell, and PetroChina. $4.1 trillion of market capitalization concentrated in the shareholders of big oil. The only company in the renewable industry that's in the top 100 market cap globally is NextEra Energy, and they're just north of $100 billion market cap, which is basically 41x. 41x of NextEra is what big oil is today. So we're still at the very foundation of the energy transition. So how do renewables rise in value in the global economy? So Some more stats as of 2023. So as of 2023, the world was onboarding 1 gigawatt of solar daily. And that's everything, from the village in Madagascar to the Al Dhafra 2 gigawatt solar farm in Abu Dhabi. So anything from small solar to these large solar deployments, 1 gigawatt is coming on board every day. Globally today, there's roughly 1 terawatt of wind generation capacity. What does that equate to, just for us to understand? That's about 50 times the amount of energy that Ontario uses on a given moment is what we have for wind capacity. China alone has 609 gigawatts of solar and 400 and something gigawatts of wind. So that's just in China. 45% of the Chinese grid is now fueled by nameplate capacity from wind and solar. So even though people say China is a big emitter of coal, what we have in front of us is this massive energy transition. Before, in the so-called warm-up area, we talked about an election that's next door and what that'll mean for the energy transition. But the unit economics essentially still take care of themselves. Otherwise, the Chinese government would not be investing in that. So while down south, someone might be saying, drill, baby, drill, if you listen to any of the coverage on any of the networks. In spite of that, the transition to renewable energy is happening in various capacities around the world. We gathered this panel today to talk about, how do we make wind and solar energy more dispatchable, more controllable, more usable, like natural gas, like oil, like coal, with the combination of storage and intelligence and grid awareness. So basically, I'd like to close my part, but introduce the event with one more thing. We talk about sustainability and the energy transition. And right here today, we're in the home of the Ojibwe, the Cree, the Mohawk, and the Algonquin. They were the people who were here before most people here arrived. They lived with a very sustainable lifestyle connected to the earth, living off what the earth generated without a big footprint per human. And I think there's something there that we can all aspire towards. And all of you working on the energy transition are a piece of enabling that for us to go back to that. So that's pre-1776, Industrial Revolution, birthplace of or a birth date of the US. And prior to that, New France and New England and all of that were coexisting with the indigenous populations who were living in a much more sustainable manner. So with that, let's get into the panel. I'm going to hand the floor to our panelists who will introduce themselves one by one, who they are, what their organization does, what their interest is in the energy transition and storage. And then my colleague Shashi, who leads our business development for our energy storage autopilot product line from BluWave-ai, will get into some technical Q&A. And for those in the audience who are online or are just getting exposed to BluWave-ai, our goal is to basically predict, optimize, control, and dispatch how renewable energy is used in smart grids and electrified transportation. With the home based in Canada for world markets, we're on the foundation. We're not a $100 billion company like NextEra, but you see the magnitude and the difference between the oil economy and the renewable industry. And we're all foot soldiers in this transition. So I'd like to thank everyone who's emotionally, economically, time-wise invested into the whole transition. So over to our panelists.